You've entered the archives of the forgotten. I'm Dr. Haunted. Tonight I'll show you what was never meant to be seen. Just remember, once you know the truth, you can't unsee it. I've been a park ranger at Coyote Ridge National Park for 15 years. Most days are routine, helping lost tourists, treating minor injuries, enforcing park rules. But what happened 3 summers ago in Dead Man's Canyon still haunts me. It was July, temperatures hitting 110 degrees Fahrenheit by noon. A solo hiker named Marcus Chen signed our trail register, indicating he planned a day hike through the canyon. Experienced guy, according to his log entry. Had all the right gear. When he didn't return by nightfall, protocol demanded we begin search procedures. I led the initial team, expecting to find him nursing a sprained ankle or sheltering from the heat. We found his car at the trailhead, untouched. His footprints led into the canyon, following the main trail initially, then diverting toward an unmarked path that locals call the Shaman's Route, an ancient trail that indigenous guides warn visitors to avoid. By midnight, we had search helicopters with thermal imaging scanning the canyon. Nothing. His footprints simply stopped in the middle of a stretch of sandstone, as if he'd vanished mid-step. On the second day, we found his backpack perched on a rock formation locals call the Watchers, a series of wind-carved pillars that vaguely resemble hunched figures. His water, food, and first aid kit were untouched inside. His camera contained photos taken just hours before his disappearance. The final image showed something our team can't explain. The metadata confirmed it wasn't edited, a humanoid shadow standing atop a distant ridge, impossibly tall and thin. Park officials dismissed it as a trick of light on the canyon walls. On the third day, I discovered a small cave entrance partially hidden by brush. Inside, arranged in a perfect circle, were Marcus's boots, socks, watch, and wallet. In the center of the circle was a pile of fine, red sand that wasn't native to our region. When I returned with the search team 30 minutes later, the cave was empty. Even the entrance seemed smaller, as if the earth was slowly reclaiming it. On day 5, as hope dwindled, I hiked to a secluded spring to refill my canteen. There, carved freshly into a boulder, was a message. The desert takes what it needs. Below it was Marcus's driver's license. We called off the search after 2 weeks. His case remains officially classified as an unexplained disappearance, likely due to heat exposure and disorientation. But I know what I saw in those final days of searching. Footprints appearing behind me when I was alone, always leading deeper into the canyon. The whispers that seemed to rise with the evening wind, speaking in a language I couldn't understand, but somehow felt I should know. And I know what I found 1 year to the day of his disappearance, when I returned to the canyon alone. Marcus's journal, weathered but legible, its final entry reading, "I'm not lost. I'm finally where I belong. The ancient ones have been waiting. They're beautiful and terrible and hungry. Don't look for me. You'll only find them instead." 3 hikers have vanished in Dead Man's Canyon since then. Each time I join the search. Each time I find their belongings arranged in perfect circles. Each time no bodies are ever recovered. And each time I feel eyes watching from the Watchers. Their stone faces somehow less weather-worn, more defined with each passing year. I shouldn't have taken that shortcut across the Mojave. Everyone knows you stick to the highways when crossing desert at night. But I was running late for my sister's wedding in Vegas, and Google Maps showed a service road that would save me 2 hours. The road started out fine, paved, marked, normal, but after 30 miles the pavement gave way to gravel, then hard-packed sand. My cell signal disappeared. The GPS kept insisting I was on track, so I pressed on. Around midnight, my car's temperature gauge spiked. Steam billowed from under the hood. I coasted to a stop in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by moonlit sand and silence so complete it felt like pressure against my eardrums. I took stock of my situation. Half a bottle of water, no signal, and at least 50 miles from the nearest town. The smart play was to wait until morning, then start walking. Desert nights get cold, so I stayed in the car, drifting in and out of restless sleep. At 2:17 a.m., I remember checking my watch. I woke to headlights on the horizon. Relief washed over me as they approached. Help had arrived, but something was wrong. The car was vintage. A massive 1950s Cadillac, pristine white despite the dusty conditions, gliding silently across the desert floor. It shouldn't have been able to drive off-road with its low clearance. It stopped beside me, engine off but headlights still blazing. The driver's window rolled down smoothly, revealing a smiling, middle-aged man in an old-fashioned suit. "Car trouble, miss? You shouldn't be out here alone. Kingman's just up ahead. We can give you a lift to the Golden Oasis Motel." Something felt wrong. Kingman wasn't just ahead. It was 50+ miles away. And the Golden Oasis, I'd never heard of it. Still, the alternative was a night alone in the desert. "My wife's in the back," the man said. "She'll keep you company." I peered through the rear window. A woman in a blue dress sat motionless, staring straight ahead, her face obscured by shadow despite the bright moonlight. "That's very kind, but I think I'll wait for morning," I heard myself say. The man's smile didn't waver, but it no longer reached his eyes. "Are you sure? The desert gets mighty dangerous after dark. All sorts of things come out when the sun goes down." The woman in the back seat slowly turned toward me. Where her face should have been was just smooth skin. No features, no eyes, nose or mouth. Just blank flesh stretched over a skull. I stumbled backward. The man's smile widened impossibly, splitting his face almost to his ears. "Last chance," he said, voice suddenly multi-toned as if several people were speaking simultaneously. "The Golden Oasis has a vacancy waiting. Been waiting 67 years now." I ran, away from the road into the desert, heart pounding. When I looked back, the white Cadillac was gone. My own car sat alone on the road, hood still steaming. I spent the night huddled behind a large boulder, watching the road. Just before dawn, a highway patrol officer found me, responding to a report about an abandoned vehicle. He said there had been a Golden Oasis motel in Kingman. It burned down in 1956. A family of 3 had died, husband, wife, and teenage daughter. They were returning from Las Vegas when they disappeared in the desert for 3 days, before their bodies were found in their white Cadillac, parked behind the motel as it burned. My car's engine problem? The mechanic found nothing wrong. It started perfectly when the patrol officer tried it. I flew to Vegas for the wedding. I don't drive through the desert anymore, especially at night. And I never ever take shortcuts. I was part of a geology research team studying the limestone formations in Arizona's Sonoran Desert. 5 of us spent 2 weeks collecting samples and mapping newly discovered cave systems. Dr. Reyes, our lead researcher, was particularly interested in a network we named Echo Caves for the way sounds carried through its chambers. The caves weren't on any official maps. A local rancher had discovered them after a minor earthquake shifted part of his property, revealing a narrow entrance in a dried creek bed. For days, everything was routine, taking samples, recording data, setting up camp each night under star-filled skies. But on day 9, we discovered something unusual at the back of Echo Caves' main chamber, a perfectly circular tunnel, about 4 feet in diameter, descending at a 40-degree angle into darkness. "This isn't natural," Dr. Reyes said, examining the smooth walls. "These are tool marks. Who would dig such a tunnel in the middle of nowhere? How long had it been here?" The questions intrigued us enough to extend our expedition by 3 days. We secured climbing ropes and descended the sloping tunnel. It continued for nearly 100 feet before opening into a large underground chamber with a ceiling so high our headlamps couldn't reach it. The chamber contained primitive paintings, figures with elongated limbs surrounding smaller, human-like shapes. Carbon dating equipment showed the paintings were over 9,000 years old. This changes everything we know about prehistoric settlements in this region, Dr. Reyes whispered in awe. But that wasn't all we found. In the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal with a perfectly spherical depression holding what appeared to be a metallic ball about the size of a grapefruit. "Don't touch it," Dr. Reyes warned as Marcus, our youngest researcher, reached for it. "We need to document everything first." We photographed from every angle, took measurements, scraped minute samples. The metal was unlike anything we'd ever seen, similar to hematite but with properties that defied analysis with our field equipment. As sunset approached, we reluctantly prepared to exit the caves. Dr. Reyes insisted we tell no one about our find until we could return with proper equipment and authentication experts. That night, sitting around our campfire, we noticed something odd. The stars seemed to shift position when we weren't looking directly at them. Marcus developed a splitting headache and began muttering about voices in the walls. We attributed it to dehydration and sent him to rest in his tent. Hours later, I woke to Marcus screaming. By the time we reached his tent, he was convulsing, eyes rolled back, mouth foaming. Then, suddenly, he went completely still. "We need to get him to a hospital," I insisted. As we prepared to transport him, Marcus sat up robotically. His expression was blank, his voice flat as he spoke words none of us understood. Then, in English, "The sphere calls. They are returning." He collapsed again, this time into a coma-like sleep that lasted until morning. At dawn, we found the cave entrance had changed. Widened somehow, the edges smoothed as if melted. Marcus woke with no memory of the night's events, but insisted we return to the chamber to welcome them home. We refused, packing to leave immediately. That's when we noticed the peculiar tracks around our camp, 3-toed impressions nearly 2 feet long, circling our tents. As we hurried toward our vehicles, the ground trembled. Looking back at the cave entrance, we saw Marcus standing there, waving at something inside the darkness. The resulting earthquake registered 4.2 on the Richter scale. Recovery teams found no trace of the cave entrance or Marcus. The official report cites a tragic accident during a geological survey. But I know what I saw before we fled. The darkness inside that cave entrance moving, reaching, flowing out like liquid shadow with purpose and intent. The military has the area quarantined now, disguised as an environmental research station. Sometimes I dream of that metallic sphere, pulsing like a beacon, calling to something ancient and patient that has waited millennia for its signal to be discovered. And I wake up finding 3-toed footprints in the dust outside my bedroom window. I'm a wildlife photographer specializing in desert ecosystems. Last spring, I spent 6 weeks in the Chihuahuan Desert, photographing endangered species for a conservation magazine. My 4th week in, I set up a blind near a seasonal water source to capture nocturnal animal activity. The blind was simple, a camouflage tent with camera ports positioned on a ridge overlooking the watering hole. I'd arrive before sunset, set up my equipment, and remain motionless for hours, documenting whatever came to drink in the night. On my 3rd night, just after midnight, I witnessed something I still struggle to explain. The moon was nearly full, casting enough light to see without night vision equipment. I'd already photographed several kit foxes and a pair of javelinas when the water's surface began to ripple. Gentle, concentric circles expanding outward, despite the absence of wind. The temperature dropped suddenly. My breath fogged in front of my face. Impossible for a desert night that had been near 80 degrees Fahrenheit moments before. Through my telephoto lens, I watched as the sand around the water's edge began to move, not blowing or shifting, but rising, forming shapes approximately the size and proportions of humans, but impossibly thin, no wider than a few inches. 3 sand figures stood upright at the water's edge, featureless silhouettes composed entirely of swirling desert particles. They moved with unnatural fluidity, bending to touch the water's surface with limbs that sometimes stretched to twice their normal length. I photographed them compulsively, my scientific mind trying to rationalize. A dust devil phenomenon, perhaps, or a mirage caused by temperature inversions. But when they turned simultaneously toward my hiding spot, all rationalizations failed. They had no faces, yet I felt them looking directly at me. Slowly, deliberately, they began moving up the ridge toward my blind. I remained frozen, partly from fear, partly from professional instinct to document the impossible. Through my viewfinder, I watched them approach. 5 shots, 10, 20, the motor drive whirring as they drew nearer. 50 yards away, 30, 10. They surrounded my blind, their forms now towering twice the height of a normal human. Sand particles that composed them clicked gently against my tense material. A sound filled my head, like thousands of voices whispering simultaneously. The words just below comprehension, but the meaning somehow clear. Witness. Remember. Warn. One of the figures pressed against the tent wall, its sand form beginning to seep through the fabric. Impossible yet, happening inches from my face. Grains of sand brushed my cheek, burning cold. I broke then, abandoning equipment and scrambling from the blind. I ran blindly into the desert night, not stopping until dawn found me miles from my campsite, feet bloodied, throat raw from screaming. When I returned with park rangers, my equipment was undisturbed but completely filled with sand. Inside camera bodies, sealed lens elements, even inside the battery compartments with no sign of how it entered. Of the hundreds of photographs I'd taken, only one showed anything unusual. 3 vertical smears of light where the figures had stood. The metadata showed the image temperature at negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Impossible in the desert. Park officials suggested dust devils combined with exhaustion and dehydration caused my experience. My therapist suggests stress-induced hallucination. But neither explanation accounts for what's happening now, 3 months later. The strange whispers that wake me nightly. The impossible landscapes I sketch in my sleep. Places that exist nowhere on Earth. And most disturbing, the growing collection of sand piles I find each morning. Tiny mounds arranged in perfect circles around my bed. The grains unlike any sand native to this region. They found something when I was out there alone. Or perhaps they were always looking, waiting for someone to notice them. And now they're following me home. That concludes tonight's case. But the shadows don't sleep. I'm Dr. Haunted. Until next time, keep your doors locked, your lights low, and your nightmares closer.